Hey folks, how's it going? Room Gaming here, back with another video. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the Frost Mage in Phase 2 of Season of Discovery. We're going to go over two builds here. We're going to go over the Frost AoE build, and then we also have a Frost single target build. Alright, so starting out with the AoE build here, some of the noticeable talents you'll be taking that kind of differs from the single target build is going to be Frost Channeling. So during an AoE pool, right, you're using a whole bunch of Blizzards. And Blizzard is a very expensive spell to use. So Frost Channeling, if you're doing a whole bunch of chain pulling, is going to be very beneficial to your overall mana. We're also taking Improved Blizzard here. Improved Blizzard is actually going to add the chill effect, which is very important for how a lot of our runes and sort of talents synergize with one another. So again, if you are doing a bunch of AoE mob pulls, you want to be taking Improved Blizzard. And then we're also going to be taking Permafrost as well. So that's going to increase the duration of your chill effects by 3 seconds. And it's going to reduce the target speed by an additional 10%. And then, of course, if you're chain pulling a whole bunch of mobs in an AoE scenario, you're going to want to be taking Ice Block. That's going to be your sort of immunity. And then we will also be taking Ice Barrier for that Frost Absorbed Shield. It's going to make you really tanky. Now, of course, we're also going to be taking Shatter here. So that's going to increase the critical strike chance of frozen targets by 50%. So we'll get into this a little bit more once we start to look at runes, but this is going to be very core to sort of how our AoE rotation works. It's also really good for single target as well. So we'll be taking Shatter and then also Ice Shards here. That's going to increase the crit strike damage bonus of your frost spells by 100%. So you can see how those two kind of synergize with one another. All right, so let's start taking a look at runes really quick just to sort of see how all these talents sort of synergize with one another. So let's start with Fingers of Frost here. So Fingers of Frost is what we're going to be taking in the chest slot. So Fingers of Frost gives your chill effects a 15% chance to grant you the Fingers of Frost effect, which treat your next two spell casts as if they were frozen. So this is really good if you're taking something like Improved Blizzard, right? Because Improved Blizzard adds that chill effect. So all those mobs as you're hitting with a Blizzard now have a chance to proc Fingers of Frost. So Fingers of Frost is going to synergize really well here with Ice Shards. So that's going to increase the critical strike damage of your frost spells by 100%. So you can kind of see in the AoE build, it's like you want to apply as many chill effects as you possibly can. And you want to proc Fingers of Frost to try and get those big critical strikes from your other spell abilities. So while we're on the topic, let's also talk about Brain Freeze, which is going to be one of your feat runes that you take for the AoE build. So once again, going back to chilling effects, your frost damage spells with chilling effects have a 15% chance to cause your next fireball, spell Frost Bolt, or Frost Fire Bolt to be instant cast and cost no mana. So as you can kind of see here, everything kind of revolves around these chilling effects that you're applying, and that can come from, again, Improved Blizzard, that can come from like Cone of Cold, anything that applies that slow chilling effect. And you're going to kind of be like a proc heavy sort of class, sort of spec. So you proc the chilling effects and all these other abilities kind of synergize with that chilling effect, and that's where your damage comes from. So what you'll do is when Brain Freeze procs, you will be using this on your Frostfire Bolt for those large single target crits. So we talked about Frostfire Bolt. What the heck is it? Frostfire Bolt is going to be what's going into our Waste rune. So it's going to launch a bolt of Frostfire at the enemy, causing Frostfire damage. It's going to slow their movement speed by 40%. So it's going to add some sort of like a chill effect to them. And this is also going to add a dot to the target for 9 seconds based on, whatever your current damage is. It's going to take a percentage of that damage and add it in as a ticking dot. This is going to be a really hard hitting ability. So you want to take this for both the single target and the AoE build. Then we also have Living Bomb here. So the target becomes a Living Bomb, taking damage over 12 seconds. After 12 seconds, or when the spell is dispelled, the target's going to explode and erupt into a whole bunch of AoE damage. So Living Bomb is something we're still going to take in AoE scenarios. And then, of course, we also have Living Flame here. So it summons a Spellfire Flame that moves toward the target, leaving a trail of fire. This trail deals X amount of damage every second to nearby enemies. So we're going to have Living Flame and Living Bomb kind of as our main AoE damage. And then we're also going to have Blizzard with Improved Blizzard, just to add on top of all that. And then we'll be using Fingers of Frost, Frostfire, and Brain Freeze to take out any sort of like straggling targets, or if we need some sort of priority damage. And of course, for survivability down here, we got Ice Block and Ice Barrier. All right, now let's quickly talk about our single target damage and what runes and talents we're going to be taking there. So we're going to be taking Improved Fireball and Improved Frostbolt, because again, we are taking Frostfire Bolt here, and Frostfire Bolt is going to benefit from both Improved Frostbolt and Fireball. You can see we are also taking Ignite, and Frostfire Bolt is going to be able to apply that Ignite for us. So your critical strikes from fire damage spells cause your target to burn for an additional 40% of your spell's damage over 4 seconds. So you can see over here on the right hand side, we had to drop Improved Blizzard, we had to drop Permafrost, and we had to drop Ice Barrier to get these two over here. But in terms of a raid boss, in terms of single target damage, this is going to give us the most output. And then in terms of our runes here, the only thing that changes between the single target and the AoE build is going to be spell power. So it increases the critical strike damage bonus of all spells by 50%. So really all we're trying to do with this build is we're just trying to get really strong, hard-hitting Frostfire bolts out. And as you can probably tell, right, spell power is going to synergize really well with Ice Shards. So instead of getting a 100% critical strike damage bonus, you're going to be getting 150 once the two are combined. So again, your Frostfire bolts are going to be hitting extremely hard in this build. All right, guys, so let's talk about gear really quick. And let's first take a look at the head slot. So we have the Neuralinked Arcano Filament Monocle. That's a hard one to say there. That's going to come from tailoring, and it is by far going to be the best head slot that we have access to here in Phase 2. You can just hovering it here, you can see all the raw stats: stamina, intellect, MP5, 22 spell power. It does also have an on-use effect. So the on-use is just basically going to reduce the mana cost of all of our spells by 50%, and it's going to increase the damage and healing done for all of our spells by up to 50. So that's really strong. It might be kind of hard to get access to early in the phase. We do also have the Engineering Spell Power Goggles Extreme here that are a bit lower on the tier list. So those will come from Engineering. So outside of that, this Hyperflux Reactivator is going to come from a Gnomergan, and it's pretty strong, but you're probably not going to have access to that either. So you'll probably be stuck with the BFD Thinking Cap at the start of the phase. But going back to the Hyperflux Reactivator here, that's going to have an on-use effect. It's going to basically send out a lightning bolt of nature damage, and that's actually on a really high cooldown. It's on a 30-minute cooldown. I'm not sure how the Barrier of Electricity works. I don't know if it's like an absorb effect, and then once the absorb effect is gone, then you have to wait to use the ability again, or to use the item again. But we also get a 16 spell power bonus here, having this equipped. All right, so moving on to the neck. As you can see here, we have the Peace Officer's Torque. The only reason that this is higher than the Piston Pendant is going to be because the Critical Strike. We know that Critical Strike synergizes really well with our talents, so that's why it is at the top of the tier list. We also have the Piston Pendant right below it. It does give more intellect, and I believe it gives a little bit less stamina, but it does give 9 spirit. And it also does give us 9 spell powers. So, I like Piston Pendant better. That's just kind of personal preference, just for the raw stats that it gives. But, they're both very equal in terms of damage output. Okay, up next in our shoulder slot, we have the Sub-Zero Pauldrons. Those are going to be coming from BFD. There's nothing that's going to be better than those in this current phase. We do have Synthetic Mantle, actually, that does drop from Gnomergan, but it does not give frost damage, right? So it's not going to be as beneficial to us. It just gives us regular spell damage. So these two are very close. It's a win-win regardless of which one you get access to. If you can't get access to either of those, we do have the Azure Shoulders, which come from tailoring. They're going to give us 13 frost damage and 5 stamina. All right, now getting into our back. This is going to be the first item on the list that comes from the new Blood Moon event in Stranglethorn Vale. That's going to cost 2 silver coins. And the Bloodrot Cloak is going to give us 7 stamina, 6 intellect, and 11 spell damage. If you can't get access to that early, we do have the Frost Leather Cloak, which comes from leatherworking. That's going to give us 11 frost spell damage. All right, now let's take a quick look at our chest piece. So our Bis chest piece is going to obviously be from our set bonus, right? So that's going to be the Irradiated Garments set. So as you can see here, the 1 set is going to be -5 stamina. That's kind of troll, to be honest. The 2 set is going to give us 1% critical strike with melee and range attacks. And then the 3 set's going to give us 11 damage and healing. So just 11 spell power, basically. So I think this is going to be a pretty good tier set. There's going to be nothing that even remotely competes with this. We have Robes of the Magi right below it. But looking at the Frost EP, this is just a tier above everything else. So you want to try to get access to this as quickly as possible. So yeah, this should be a pretty fun set to play around. As you can also see here, the other 2 pieces are going to be the Irradiated Trousers and then the Irradiated Boots here. And once again, they're just, you know, a decent tier above everything else. So that's going to kind of cover the 3 set, the new 3 set from Gnomergen. We also have on our wrists the Dryad's Wrist Bindings. Those are going to come from Warsong Outriders. And once again, we're kind of in a similar situation. There's nothing that's going to come even close to this. Looking at the Frost EP of 17. If you can't get access to this early, we do have the Lev's Oil Stain Bindings, which come from Gnomergen. But once again, just the raw stats that you get from it do not compare to the wrist bindings. Now, taking a look at the staff, I'm not 100% sure on what's Bis, because I'm not sure what the hit cap rating is. So the Staff of Evil Genius right now is listed as the top staff to get. That probably has something to do with the 1% hit. But the raw stats that it gives aren't as good as Staff of Jordan and the Rod from BFD. So the Rod here is going to give 26 spell damage versus 20 on the Evil Genius. And then Staff of Jordan is also going to give 26. And they both also give more intellect than the Staff of Evil Genius. So I'm not sure if this is actually going to be Bis or not. I guess it really just comes down to how hit cap rating looks, how close you are to the hit cap. I'm not sure if it's like a 5% hit cap, 16%. So we'll just have to see in that regard. If you are hit capped without the staff, then I recommend the Rod of Ancient Sleepwalker or the Staff of Jordan. All right, taking a look at the gloves now. Nothing super exciting here. We have the Dreamwave gloves. That's going to give us 18 spell damage and 4 int. But all these are going to come from tailoring. If you're not a tailor, your next best option is going to come from Gnomergen. The Fighter Ace gloves. That's going to give you 9 spell damage and 10 intellect. All right, taking a look at the belt now. We've got 2 really good options here. We have the Volatile Concoction belt. That's going to come from Gnomergen. Again, it's giving us access to hit, 1% hit, so that's why it's top of the tier list at the moment. And then we have the Hyperconductive Gold Wrap, which is going to come from Engineering. One of the reasons this is so strong is because it gives us critical strike. So it gives us that 1% critical strike as well as 1% hit. And we already talked about the belt and the feet. That's going to complete our tier set bonus. So since we already talked about those, let's go ahead and jump into the rings. So the best ring, once again, you don't have too many options here. The 2 best rings by far are going to be the Loop of Chilled Veins. That's going to come from the Blood Moon event from Stranglethorn Veil for 5 of the silver coins. And then we also have the Hypercharged Gear of Conflagration, which comes from Gnomergen. So that's going to give you 4 MP5, 11 spell damage, and 4 intellect. And then outside of that, you're kind of going to be relying on Reputation. There's another decent ring that drops from Gnomergen here, this Hexanut. So those are kind of your options in terms of rings. All right, then in terms of trinkets, hopefully you got the Invoker's Void Pearl from BFD, because it doesn't look like there's going to be too many options here going into the next phase. Kind of scroll down a little bit more. So we have the new Novigan trinket, the Combustion Chamber, and the way that that's going to work is it's going to take your health and it's going to convert it into mana. So that's the on-use effect. It's going to give 12 damage and 6 intellect. And then once again, outside of that, like I said, hopefully you got the BFD Pearl here. That's going to give you that additional 11 spell damage. And finally, we arrive to the wands. So we have the Freezing Shard, which drops from RFD. But as you can see, it's an extremely low drop rate. So for 99.9% of people, I would recommend just getting the Ice Fury wand. It's going to come from the Mage class quest. So the Freezing Shard does give frost damage, so it probably is slightly better than the Ice Fury wand, but in terms of min-maxing, if you're trying to parse a 99, then yeah, probably go Freezing Shard. Anybody else, I would just recommend Ice Fury wand. And then, of course, outside of that, we have 2 new wands dropping from Nomergan, the Necrotic wand and the Gear Shifter here. They're both pretty decent. So if for whatever reason you don't get the class wand, you can rely on the Gear Shifter here, which is going to give you 9 spell damage. All right, guys, and one last thing here that I want to talk about is going to be some noticeable buffs, right? So your main hand weapon, you're going to want to be putting Wizard Oil on your weapon. It's going to increase spell damage by up to 24. That lasts for 30 minutes. And then for your Elixir, you want to be running Elixir of Frost Power for that 15 increased frost damage. All right, guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and we will see you all in the next one.